Hi and welcome to what is actually the first ever Dev Talk here at rFactor 2. And when it's called Dev Talk, then we should actually talk to developers, right? Not to me, because I might be the host in here, normally business manager Renee, but I don't have anything to do with development. So for that, I actually have a guest that should give us a bit more insight what's happening currently in the rFactor 2 development work. So I actually got Chris. Chris, you're the unlucky one that got grabbed first. You couldn't run away fast enough.
Yeah, you got me. You trapped me inside this. I have
Yeah, I'm
nowhere to
sorry.
go.
You
I've already been trapped in here though for months, so it's fine. I feel right at home. But yeah,
that's what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to make sure that you actually feel right at home, so we
yeah,
can talk
it's
about user experience. But before we do that, let's talk about what you actually do at Studio 397.
um. Didn't you say that I just point around at people and tell them to do stuff?
That's what
That's
I
pretty
think
much my
about
job,
it.
right? I think you made it here. It's a button that I can press right here.
It's called
Produce,
Chris, but you're Chris.
producer, producer. Yeah. So yeah, I started out as a test lead. And then I sort of quickly transitioned into doing production and helping out on all kinds of things in rFactor. I think people see that I'm, always going from different places, doing different things, and that's I have a role that has many roles, I guess you could say. So
Probably
yeah,
applies
that's
to a
pretty
lot of
much I
us.
do what I do. Yeah.
Chris is actually, I would say, from our side, from the business side, our first contact point when it comes to development and the pipeline and what you guys are doing. And every time we wish something, then we go to Chris and ask for it nicely, and then mostly he says no. That's how development works. No, not really. But let's dive into the actual topic, which is user experience, which is also pretty close to our new UI, which we will also touch today. But before we do that, uh, let's start off with saying we know that rFactor 2 is probably not the easiest software to use, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've since we took over Studio 397, we've tried really hard to improve the user experience with just getting into the game and being able to set things up. And I think the new UI was a big step in that direction. And I know that people are really impatient for it because we've been working on it for a while now. But we did release a public beta not long ago, and people are able to try it out. And it's not exactly new for the public yet
Mm.
right now, but we're working on getting a final release of it out. But our main goal with this UI was to give something, sort of get away from the old UI and get something that we can really be able to do things that we couldn't do before, which is like hook up a competition system and the packaging system, the content, hardware setup, all that we wanted to put in. And we didn't really have that possibility with the old UI, and the new UI gives us a lot of possibility. But I understand that people are waiting patiently for the new UI, and it's something that we need to get right, and we need to get it working on a basic level so that we can go places with it. And that's what we're focusing on right now.
So obviously the old UI, which is really old, let's be honest here, in terms of rFactor, it came a long
Hmm.
way, and the new UI, which you actually see around us, just in
Hmm.
case you wonder what this is, if you never started the public beta so far, that's the actual current UI starting screen. So
Hmm.
with that, we have a new structure and we have new ways of bringing stuff in, and it all sounds fancy and all that, and should always become easier. We know that, but let's go through different things I can now do in the new UI or will be able to do in future releases, because obviously the first release will always be like a base version. What can I, as a user now, I jump into rFactor 2, let's say I want to do a AI race, whatever. What can I do in the new UI that's easier compared to the first one?
I think in general, the new UI should be a lot more intuitive for the user. We had, if you know how rFactor 2 works right now, we have this thing called the launcher, which pops up on your desktop and has a bunch of buttons and things. And it's a bit like you're not in game yet. You're sort of still on the desktop, and you need to have this extra tool to get in the UI. One of the big things that we did, which was quite a big job and a lot bigger job than we sort of planned for, because a lot of things were interconnected to it, was to get rid of this sort of cyborg, weird, I'm not in game, I'm in game sort of thing, and just make it so you press play and you're straight in the UI. And I think that alone gives people a lot of clarity that have never used rFactor before. I think if you use rFactor for a long time, you have a lot of like things that you already are automatic gestures that you do to get in game or
Yeah.
whatever. But for a new user, when they see this atmosphere here, this is what they should see. They should be able to go direct to a page that shows them, here's my multiplayer, here's single player, here's where I set things up, here's where I set a UI, an AI race. All that stuff needs to be intuitive. And I think for a new user, that's the most important thing, is the entry point to the software. And I think before we had this dual state that didn't really make sense to people. And now, you're straight in it. And that's a big step up.
You said we step right into the new UI. Obviously, there is no launch anymore, which also means if I now start in the new UI, it actually installs packages right at the start.
Yeah.
But when we talk about packages, it also now checks when I enter a server, right? So will it be easier for me in the future to go onto a server where I either might not own content, or I didn't download it yet, or I didn't subscribe to it in the workshop?
That's something that we're actively working on. That is not going to be finished for the first release, but it should eventually check for workshop items that you're not subscribed to, automatically subscribe to, and then you join the server. We're already able to do that in a test scenario, but it still needs a bit more code work to actually work properly. But yeah, that's a big one that we've actually been looking at, and that should work in the future for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make our lives a lot easier. I'm absolutely sure about that.
For sure,
we obviously know about the problems of each of you guys out there when you want to join a server and there are mods running and you can't easily identify which mods you're missing and stuff like that. So all of that should become a lot easier with the new UI. Obviously, the new UI doesn't feature us in the middle of it, not like it is right now. So don't worry about it. But I heard that I can actually have our esports and competition live streams on it, right?
There is an area that will feature our live streams that users will see when they fire up the UI. So yeah, that's part of the, well, you can see it here. That's part of the watch. Oh, sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way. The watch screen over here. And like I said, these are the first release of the UI. I mean, not to lower expectation, but this first hurdle that we have is to really get it released and get it in people's hands and get it we want to get it working the way it was working in the original UI, and then we can add anything we want to it. It has a ton of flexibility that we didn't have in the old UI. So I think that's the main thing to keep in mind, is that we're trying to add all of these new things after we have everything running properly. And that's what's been our main focus.
Where's the actual new flexibility coming from?
Well, it comes from the fact that it's HTML based, and that the old UI was a sort of very complex, difficult thing to use and change anything. And this is just, we can change anything on the fly here really easily because of the way it's set up now. And it's I think a lot of people have this idea that it's just a UI, but I think for us this was more than a UI, because this was a whole revamping of how the game works. It wasn't, the UI is what you see on the exterior, but the capabilities that it will have in the future for a competition, for, like you just said, getting the packages and getting workshop items, those are the big things that people really want. And those are the things that we want to do. But we first have to get over these big hurdles to get there.
Talking about getting over these big hurdles, and then it obviously takes time. Where are we right now? I mean, we know that we communicated the new UI quite a while ago. Obviously, the first beta release to the public is already some weeks old. Can you give us some sort of a timeline, maybe? I know it's always hard, and we don't want to dive into that because it's always with development and games in general. It's a very risky maneuver.
Yeah.
But where are we right now? What is maybe holding us back a bit? Sometimes why there's no new version yet?
I think what holds us back a bit is that we, because there's so many edge cases in a UI and things that can go wrong, we stumble upon something new and then we want to fix that. We don't want to release that to the public if it's something that breaks the game. So we're constantly reevaluating, looking at things, testing them, and that's what's taking a lot of our time. And I think there's a full-time group of people that are working on this UI actively right now. And I know for the public, there's probably pretty high expectations for it, but we're just as excited to get this out as everyone else. I mean, we want this to see the light of day and to just get in people's hands and start using it. But the hurdles are really, they're just technical ones that are, I couldn't explain them right here because they're mostly code related. But they're just things that we have to get through. And I can see people are, frustrated, and they say it's just a UI, and can't you just release it? And I think it's just important that, because this is such a big step and it changes so much, we want to try to get the core foundation of this right before we give it to the public. And I think that if you want to call it holding it back, I think that's what's holding it back right now. But we're, as far as release goes, I don't want to say anything, because then I know that I'm going to be held to that. And it's also largely up to not just me. It's up to Marcel. First of all, it's up to the rest of the
We
team
play
when
the
things are going
blame
to go
game
out.
now.
I'm pushing it over to someone else, but it's largely up to the team. And we, we work in a very dynamic group of people. We do a lot of planning. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of testing together. We look at the tasks that we're going to cover every week, and we're all heavily involved, and we're all heavily motivated to get this up and running. But I think the end decision is to say, are we all as a team okay with this to go out? And I think we're very near, very near. But I don't want to. I personally can't really give a date, because I think that's something that the whole team decides, and it's a big decision. But on the other hand, I can say confidently that we're very, very close. So, yeah.
I would say that's a great start. And maybe we can talk about some stuff that's actually in there already, but might not be big news. I mean, we know that we want to basically look at every single menu and see what can be better there, what kind of settings we could get from JSON files finally into the new UI, right? Because I'm always the guy telling you, whatever is in a JSON file is not in the game for me, because
Yeah.
I hate doing files and typing in there. So it needs to be in the UI for me, and but that's
Yeah.
basically what we're trying to do, right? But there are also small things that we actually did already, and maybe it's something that people didn't notice yet in the public release. For example, you know that we, like Ruben, Jimmy, and me, we do the competition part on it. We do streams on it. For
Hmm.
example, there is already the small line when I click on a driver while watching in the standings that tells me on which position he started and which position
Hmm.
he is in currently, with a nice graph showing his position flow, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a nice little feature already, right? And it's not
Yeah.
the only one.
But that's a really good example of the things that we can do. I mean, we can basically do anything now through the UI. And I think things like the graph of your position changing in the standings, that's just one of the things that we can do. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can change, and anything from, we have a live track map now.
Mm.
We have a way more elaborate replay screen that is way more intuitive than the original one. All of those things are, on top of that, we can release this and we can get feedback from the users and see what users want to have. And we can say, yeah, we can do that. Instead, like before, it was like, no, we can't do that because we have this old UI and we can't change anything. And that would be a big, massive step. Whereas this is just changing some HTML, adding a bit of code. There's some Java in there, and we're good to go.
So
And I
it's
think
super easy. Chris will do that tomorrow.
I will. Yeah. I don't think anyone want me to do that. But I think that's actually kind of an interesting point, because I'm not a programmer. I don't do programming. I do a little bit of scripting and things when it comes to with release content. But I, just like everybody else, I'm a user, and I look at it from the perspective of normal users. I'm not saying that programmers don't do that, but I'm saying I
They don't. We
sort
know
of
that.
I want it to work just like any average sim racer, because I'm a sim racer like everyone else, and I think it's the same for you. I'm sure it's the same for you. You want it to just be easy, open it up, have it be intuitive, and not, like you said, have to go in files and mess around and stuff. I don't want to do that either, so I'm just like everyone else. But that said, rFactor is it's a very vast product, and I think there's always going to be some settings that are going to be in JSONs, which is fine.
No.
People that are advanced that want to do really quirky stuff with it, I think that's fine. But I think the essentials need to be in the UI.
Definitely. That's true.
That's really important. Yeah.
Maybe one thing when it comes to user experience that we didn't touch that much yet is actual broadcasting, right? We do that quite frequently now. What's
Hmm.
happening in the world, which is unfortunate for one side, good for us on the other side, because we actually get to do all these cool events and have new drivers coming in and putting some amazing racing action up. What
Hmm.
about the overlay? Because we see on the GT Pro, GT Challenge, on the race event, it's a whole new overlay system having some quite nice features, and that stuff is actually coming into the new UI, right?
Yeah, we will be putting the overlays into the nice new overlays that you see on our broadcast in the UI so that anyone can use them and fairly easily customizable. That some things will be customizable. But it'll just look nice if you run a race with your league. You can just pop in your logo and then you can go, and not much for the user or for the admin to do. So that's another thing that we can do with the new UI.
And
That's
part of that actually works already in the normal spectator screen, right? If I now hover with my mouse to the top, I actually get the banner with rankings, and not yet the one
yeah.
that we use in the new overlays, but it shows the feature actually. Coming.
Yeah.
Because the cool
Yeah.
part, I mean, for me, sometimes when I do want to do recording or want to check out content, it actually then also works with AI races, right? I don't need to have my own league. I can actually watch my own race with the proper overlays that we use in competitions, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course you can. Yeah, you can use AI will be counted just as a player car would be. So, yeah, you could use the overlay, and that's a good example. You could use the overlay do it in an AI race, and then at the end you'd see your results. That would look like an online race. So, yeah, that's a nice feature to
What
have.
about the liveries? Because we know in the alt UI I need to go to the tuning menu, then I got the 3D model of the car, I create a new
Hmm.
gear, I actually load in my livery, then save that new all these steps that probably all of these guys out there know because we know that rFactor 2 obviously has a long-lasting, very hardcore community. Not in a bad way,
Hmm.
saying it in a very like they absolutely love the product and they're hanging with us for quite a while already. So
Yeah.
is that something that will get easy as well?
Well, we did put in the tuning menu as it sort of was before, but we're looking at improving that. There is some improvement in just the general sort of intuitiveness of how you make a team and where you put in your driver name and all that, which was sort of hidden before. And but it's the tuning area is a good example of something that we'd like to elaborate a lot on and add some changes to it. We'll be putting the material editor in there so you can just with the slider make your car chrome or uh, uh, you know change the paint on it, the metallic flakes, or make it carbon. That'll all be in the new UI. That might not make it for the first release. We have to see, but definitely that'll be something where you don't have to go to an external web page and mess with sliders and then go back to the game. So
The UI Carbonara edition, make carbon everywhere. That's that's a good
I'm
start.
just making full chrome cars now. Yeah,
Please don't.
they're beautiful,
I
purple.
was really afraid of that when we released the first change to materials and and stuff like that.
I make the ugliest car I possibly can to test them out, so that everybody sees that I have a custom skin. So yeah,
Okay,
but watch out.
we will all look out for that. That's
Yeah.
pretty simple. When it comes to the UI and all the steps we want to take, there's obviously one part that is the competition system, which people know already from our hot lab competitions, right? That run on the web-based one. Will I have all of that in my actual menu, or do I still need to have a second browser open for that?
Uh, you should be able to have that in the UI when we actually implement the competition system in the new UI, which will be our next step after releasing the UI. That'll all be in game. You technically you'd never have to use a browser again. It's nice to use a browser for a competition if you're just browsing the web, you want to have a tab open and you want to say, is there a competition that I want to join? So that would be just you click on it and then it would open the UI. But if you're in the UI, then everything will be from inside the UI. You won't have to do anything external, and it'll take you straight to the server. That's something that we've also tested and that works, is that you will get all the workshop items that you don't have, and you'll also get another thing that we did, which is really nice for a competition, is you'll get a cart which has the best deals for the content that you're missing.
Hmm?
So if it's more interesting for you to buy a pack, and let's say there's 3 of the cars in it and you get a good deal on it, then we'll offer you the pack and we'll put that in your cart and you can buy it straight in the game. Boom, you're in the competition. And that's all been tested and that works. That's of course waiting on the competition system, which we still have to
Yeah, sure.
implement and put in the game. But there's a ton that we can do with it, and it's the possibilities are endless. So
Exciting times for rFactor 2, that's for sure. And
uh,
we all want that, right? We want it to be
yeah,
cool and we want people to be happy
for sure. Yeah,
with
yeah,
what we provide. Before we
yeah,
actually end our first Dev Talk, Chris, since I know that you're in the planning meetings, right? Because I know I'm there, so I see you, so I know that you know about the pipeline. Is there anything that you can, want, are allowed to hint what's coming, or besides the UI and besides competition system?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'm trying to think if I can make something up right now. And then
I
we'll
have so
then
many,
we'll
and I
and then
wonder,
we'll
like,
start working on it really quickly. Like,
mm,
yeah, what can we
I,
do?
I can't
Uh,
tease any of these. That's the problem. Like, I would like
yeah.
to, but I can't.
I think one that we're working on is a sort of FPS style driver swap where you run along the car, and then you jump inside it,
Sure.
kick the person out, or GTA style, where you just
Yeah.
pull the person out and jump in the car. So it's kind of like, GTA style driver swaps. Yeah,
It's
I'm
t-
going with that.
it's together with the DLC that we release with having all marshals. First of all, with new rain clothing, snow
Hmm.
clothing, and only having faces of everyone in the studio, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Easy as it is. All right. Thank you, Chris, for actually joining me here for the first Dev Talk. I'll let you crawl back to the code and see if all the guys are
Okay.
happily working on the UI,
Thank you. Thank
so we
you.
get it done.
In my home here. In my home. In my home.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
See you, Renee. Bye. Bye, everyone.
So that was actually the first Dev Talk. There will be more if you're interested in the actual content we're doing, or if you've got questions or topics you would like to talk about, then let us know in the comment section, on Discord, on the official forum. In general, give us feedback and let us know what you would like us to talk about. We can talk to different developers, we can talk to different people at the studio, talk about their jobs, their actual tasks, whatever comes up. We hope that you actually like it. Don't forget to actually subscribe to our channel, follow us on all the other channels, and I'll see you for the next time.